Education and Employment Committee chair, it was one of my main priorities as well. And what House Bill 3 did was it established, and we basically pardoned it, or we patterned it after the Dolly Parton Foundation and what she did. And what we're doing is we set aside $50 million in the budget, and we are partnering with school districts and nonprofits throughout the state in identifying low income and struggling readers in the elementary school level. And what they're going to be doing is getting free books in the mail without they don't have to sign up for anything. They don't have to do anything, but every month they'll be getting a free book in the mail to start their own library. And so they can start trading books with their friends and with their siblings to give them a passion for reading. Studies have shown that over 88% of high school dropouts were not reading in the third grade. And so really the key is to get kids reading by the time they're in third grade. And if not, they're really behind the 8 ball the older that they get. And, you know, the number one thing to end poverty in America and end poverty in Florida is through education and through literacy. And so that really has become a target of ours. And through this bill and through this initiative, you know, we're doing that. And then another component that wasn't part of the bill, but another component that we did is the Florida House partnered with a company, I believe it was called Reading IQ, to set up a free platform for all kids in the state of Florida through the end of the year to establish their free digital library for all kids in the state of Florida. So parents can sign up at their website, and they have over 5,500 books that they can access online through their digital library. And you know, it's something that, you know, a lot of families have taken advantage of. And another component to House Bill 3 is setting up reading boot camps, similar to what Hippie does, which is a very important program in the Tampa Bay community. But what these reading boot camps will do is teach parents how to read to their kids, which is, you know, not every child has, and it's sad, but not every child has a mother and father that will, you know, read to them when they're a baby or they're a toddler. But that's something that we're doing as well.
That's awesome. Parents, if you did not know, you get a free reading. It's on a website. Do you know the website or where they could go to get that information?
IQ or Reading IQ.
Okay.
But I can get that information for you.
All right. We want to make sure we get that out to the audience. That's a free resource for you and your kids. Reading library. That's really great. I love that.
And that's through December 31st of
this year?
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
All right. Thank you. All right, Dr. Johnson. Next question. What are going to be the top challenges for the economy in 2021? And then I have another question after that, but we'll let you answer that one first.
Okay. Well, first I'd like to say thank you for the invitation. It is an honor and a privilege to work with the Institute and all of the wonderful things that the Institute is doing for our community. So thank you for the invitation. And on behalf of Pinellas County, one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing is, well, I have 3 of them.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'll tell you the one that is clear and present is, of course, workforce. Mm-hmm. That's the new economic development initiative. We traditionally were focused on retention and expansion. Right now, our key focus is on workforce, making sure that we are connecting the dots with these, with employers and educators from the K-12 system to our college and university system. Part of the issue is that we do have talent in our community, and they're skilled, but the skills they have may not match the jobs that we have available. So we have a mixed match there, if you will. So one of our biggest challenges is to realign and upskill our employees, upskill our citizens, retrain them, and to start producing programs that can provide the relevant skills that our businesses need. So, I can talk all day about the workforce piece, but the other piece is housing. Housing is an economic development issue that we're having. And at one point, it was very affordable to live in our community. And so hence, lots of folks came to live in our community. But with doing that, because our wages have not kept up with the speed of the influx of people, we have an imbalance there. And so our housing stock is not available. And so because we don't have available housing, it becomes a workforce issue, which becomes a retention issue, which becomes an economic development issue. Because we can't attract people to come to our community or encourage our businesses to expand if we don't have anywhere for them to be housed. And then if we do build housing, it's not like it happens overnight. So it's a process to get that housing. So we're working collaboratively with our business community. And in Pinellas County, I'm really proud of the fact that the citizens of Pinellas County found it to be important enough that through the last penny, extension of the last penny, we're doing with that housing and economic development penny, percentage of the penny, we get I think I get 4.2% of that penny. And for economic development, we're using that to do redevelopment. We're using it to entice industrial space, office space in our community so our businesses have places to expand to. And in our housing, we're building workforce homes. We're building houses that our citizens can afford. So between the housing, the workforce, and the imbalance of wages, we have increased the wage percentage of our low-wage employees. So we've increased that percentage around 30% for our low-skilled, low-wage employees. But for our higher-wage employees, the wage has kind of been flat. And because it has been flat, it has not created the opportunity to be able to expand and go into that area of home ownership. Because now you have flat wages at those high skilled levels. So as we work to really partner with workforce and education, from the employer to the college university system to all of our key stakeholders with our legislators, when we get together to have these conversations, we're having conversations about what can we do to help with the economic mobility of our community. How can we move our citizens from one stage to the other? And along with the economic mobility comes our educational mobility. How do we start those first skilled employees in those areas? And then we have a cross bridge to take them from an entry-level job into another job. And a lot of that comes from education. We have to better educate our parents about the options for education. Everyone is not, and I know I'm a doctor sitting up here, but everyone is not prepared or make a good fit to go to college. However, we have Pinellas Technical College, who's a partner to St. Pete College. I know because I work with them together all the time. But we have other skills like AmSkills. We have other agencies, other organizations that provide tangible training that can translate into real jobs. And that's what our biggest challenge is getting good paying jobs for all of our citizens.
I agree. Thank you. So how do we solve these staffing shortages we see businesses have now? That can go for either of you.
Oh, now that's going to be creative. I think that, COVID has taught us a lot,
Yeah.
And one of the things that we have discovered since COVID is the ability and the necessary need to pivot. And so it's an employer's world out there. The employees pretty much can pick and choose where they want to go right now. So as employers, we have to be creative. We have to incentivize our employees to want to come. And if that means providing teleworking options, access to childcare, providing incentives that support what our citizens care about, and that's philanthropic opportunities that our employers can start to invest in our communities, where when our employees come to work, they get a more fulfilled day. It's just not about getting the paycheck, but is working for an employer who has a mission that is dear to their hearts. So discovering these things and unveiling these type of talents in your workforce is really important to making sure that we have that balance. What do you think, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I would, I would note that during the pandemic and as a result of the pandemic, half of the workforce had their wages impacted, either
Right.
by losing their job, having their hours cut, or having their salary cut. And so there's, definitely an issue with, business owners finding now, as we're kind of getting out of the pandemic and hopefully, knock on wood, getting on the other side of the pandemic eventually, getting their workforce back to a quote-unquote normal state. And hopefully people will not have a hesitation of going back to work and entering
Right.
more public, busy settings like we're in tonight, and get back to, a more normal atmosphere. And I think another thing is, now the workforce is different. Before people were going to
Right.
the office 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Now people are working at home and still, in a productive, productive way. And, as the education chair, one of the things that we really were pushing for last year were, when other states were keeping schools closed, we were pushing for keeping our schools open because it also helped the workforce be able to go back to work. So then parents didn't have to stay at home with their kids, and they could go back to work, and it, kind of helped our economy, get back on track. I believe in a, quicker than other states.
Right, and currently, right now, there's 25,000 unemployed residents here in Pinellas, according to the local workforce board, and many of them, some of them I talked to because we provide the employability skills workshop, and just like you said to us, Dr. Johnson, that many of them want flexibility in their workspaces. They're so used to being home now. We've been home for almost, a year? Going on a year and a half. That flexibility of childcare and just those services that they have currently adjusted to, they're looking for employers for that flexibility as well. So are there any coming workshops, or how are you educating employers to adjust to this new norm, as we call it?
Well, we are being very intentional here in Pinellas County, and so we're having stakeholders meetings. We're actually going to the employers, sitting down, talking with them and asking them, okay, what does your workforce look like? What are you missing? What do you have a lot of? What do you need to retrain or upskill? What are those skill sets that you need in order for you to stay whole and to grow here in Pinellas County? And then we're taking that information and we're sharing it with our education partners.
Okay.
And I can give you a key example of how this really works in a very successful way. In St. Petersburg College,
Yes.
Dr. Williams had this tremendous idea of how can we do short-term training that can help people get into a viable job that pays a livable wage.
Right.
And so it came about through a relationship of connecting with Duke Energy. For the lineman's training, this is a key example of how economic development, education, and the workforce can work collaboratively together. So having Duke Energy having a need, they need linemen's, and then St. Pete College having the available training resource to fill that need. But they had to work together to make it happen so that we can create curriculum that is applicable to what the business need is. And then from that, you entice people to come and take that training because they can see, oh, it's going to be a job at the end of this. It's short-term training. It's not a 4-year degree. It's 14 weeks, but at the end of 14 weeks, I can have a $40,000 job, which means I can take care of my family, which means I can buy grocery. It means I can give back to the economy. So all of these things work collaboratively, hand in glove. And it's programs like that that's going to really solve this workforce issue, because we have to be innovative and creative with our thought process. And we got to be agile as it happens, because we have to adapt to the environment that we're in. So I find that when you have innovative thought leaders like Dr. Williams, like our partners at Pinellas Technical College, like our partners at the state level, like Chris and his team, when they're sitting and thinking, they're thinking innovatively, what can we do differently? Because we can't have the same solutions of yesterday to answer the issues of today. And so it's that creative, innovative thought that really does bring new workforce solutions to our community.
And you are so correct and right on. That is one of our top programs, and it's to the point to where many people are coming from out of state and other counties because they heard about our lineman program. And more and more organizations are starting to see the pivot of short-term training and understanding, let's build this curriculum so it can meet the needs of our skills and competencies of the things we need from our students that are coming out on the other end. And of course, we work with Dr. Leatroff, our Vice President of Student Affairs there, where we're articulating over. So our short-term certifications are embedded into our AS degrees, and you can continue your education, as we call it, your career path, your academic career path. And that's what we're about here at St. Petersburg College. So you're right on. We welcome that. We welcome the feedback of industry and all industries to come and tell us, what are your needs, so we can embed those work-based learning programs, open your doors for internships. Right?
Apprentice programs.
Yes, and that's very key for our students so they can get the experience. So when they come out, you have somebody that's ready to go. But you also, in addition, once they come out on the other side, build that leadership program for them, because they would like to see where would they like to go in the organization. So it takes, I would say, it takes a village.
Yes, it does.
So education, government, all of the organizations that are present, students, it takes a village. Speak up and be a part of those conversations. So I appreciate you for that.
I find, Dean Barry, I find that oftentimes we don't do differently because we don't know what different to do.
Right.
So when we start to share what economic mobility really looks like, that you can start at point A and end up at point Z with a whole new skill set, and we can, articulate that to our citizens, I think that it does energize us. It does get us all, riled up and going. But those critical conversations with industry, with the legislation, and with our citizens is so important, because if we're not sharing what the process is, we may sit there and think, oh, you should just have an apprentice program. Well, it's quite not that easy to just have an apprentice program.
Okay.
But if we're as economic development practitioners talking to industry and say, this is what it takes to create an apprentice program, and we have these educational partners who are willing to work with you to create it,
Yes.
it's a whole new solution to the issue.
That's true. All right. Well, Representative Lauder, I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Last session, the Florida legislature passed a massive workforce overhaul package, House Bill 1507. I think I know it by heart. I think we all do. What are you looking for in that piece of legislation as well as next steps?
Well, that piece of legislation is the reason why the committee I chair is called the Education and Employment Committee and not just the Education Committee, which is what the committee has been called for years. And as y'all know, several years ago, or a few years ago, there was a bit of a scandal in Pinellas County with our local workforce board here. And the guy who was running it fudged some numbers on people that said that were getting jobs, and they weren't getting jobs. And people were getting paid in gift cards and cash, and which was a very serious deal. But at the time, the guy that was running the Pinellas Workforce Board or Career Source Board was also running the Hillsborough Board. And for all practical purposes, people thought that this guy was doing a good job. And so it was quite embarrassing. And when all this stuff in the news broke, and it was due to the reporting of Mark Puente in the Tampa Bay Times. And so last year, when the speaker, Chris Browse, who represents North Pinellas in the Florida House, when he was talking to me about his ideas of, being speaker, he was talking to me about wanting to be, he wanted me to be his education chair. And he said, and my idea is to expand the committee, and I want to go after workforce and the workforce boards and the career source boards, and it was because of this case. And the career source lacked transparency, lacked accountability. And so when we started, when you do things in Tallahassee and you try to set up, a bill that you want to do, you have committee meetings to kind of create the narrative. Mm-hmm. And 90% of the time when we do something, it's unanimous, Republicans and Democrats, but then there's 10% of the time that's a lot of fun where we get to fight each other and, bang on the table and call each other names, and then we go out and have a drink together and we're all friends. And my Democratic ranking member on the committee is a very nice woman, Representative Patricia Williams from Broward County. And she just so happens to have been my ranking member the last 3 years. And when I was the Education Appropriations Chair, she was my ranking member. And so we have a very good relationship. And so, I'm telling her, about some of the issues ahead of time on the career source boards, but she didn't really quite, understand. And so we, went to the lobbyist, who's a friend of mine of the association of some of the local workforce boards, and we said, we want to hear from your very best local person. And she said, okay. And so she, brought us a guy, a very nice guy, and I still feel bad for him. And so he's giving us, a presentation. And when he was done, I looked at him and I said, well, thank you very much, sir. Can you tell me how many minorities you helped, or people of color that you helped get a job last year in your county? And he looked at me and just blank stare. I said, can you tell me, and he didn't have that information. I said, all right, can you tell me how many women? And I could hear my ranking member, who sat right beside me, kind of murmur under her breath, So then I said, all right, Rep. Williams, would you like to ask him some questions? And it was obvious that they had, even their best guy had, and this was information that they should have been able to rattle, right off. And so even after, and this guy wasn't even from the Tampa Bay area. And so even after the issues that we had here, it was obvious that these people whose job it was, their sole job is to help people access jobs and teach them skills, had no idea how many people they were helping. Or, could talk about the demographics of the different people that they were helping. And somebody asked, well, can you tell us how many members of the military that you helped? Which is a very important component of people that, came back from serving overseas. And so, basically what this bill tried to do was establish some transparency and accountability. We grade schools, for instance. Mm-hmm. So when you're dealing with schools, it's important to have accountability. So why not have accountability in these workforce boards? And so we established, a way for people to kind of have like an information ecosystem to capture, career planning, job training, information, in one single access point. But also, basically to say, hey, folks, we're looking at you. And, and I think that, this year they're not off the hook. And, and I think that there are still issues there that, when you're dealing, and I kind of want to be a little careful about what I say about the local folks, because I do think that there's still the feds still are kind of looking at what happened a few years ago. And I'm not saying that anybody that's there now did anything wrong back then, but I think it's quite possible that, Pinellas County is going to end up on the hook to pay back the Department of Labor for some money that was misspent, a few years ago, and that's like 15 or 20 million, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was in the tens of millions of dollars that we may be on the hook for, and so that's not chump change.
Right.
And so I mean, there's still to answer your question, there's still work to be done this year, and that's still something that we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment, piggyback on something that Representative said, and it was about equity in going, Black and brown communities, when it comes to workforce development and education, there are some barriers in Black and brown communities that other communities don't necessarily experience. And so as we develop workforce solutions for all of our citizens, we have to make sure that we're intentional about identifying those barriers and then coming up with solutions to eliminate those barriers. Those solutions include everything from making sure that those communities have access to capital to create their own businesses. They have the technical assistance to support the entrepreneurship in that community. They have good paying jobs and quality education systems in those communities. So as we develop that workforce to be a tangible part of our collective workforce community, that we make sure that we're building programs looking through an equity lens, where we are being very inclusive about the solutions that we provide, because there are some real barriers to access of not only information, but making sure that we have sustainable communities. So the equity is just one piece of it. If it's not sustainable, then we're creating communities that are not going to be prosperous, and that's not the economic goal of any of us.
Right.
We want to make sure that our communities have well-educated citizens in those communities, and they have the access to those high-paying jobs in every community, and they have the access to quality education in every community, and that creates economic development for all.
And I think, to your point, I think that was one of the things that the Times report found that happened back in Pinellas County, was that it was the minority community where a lot of this malfeasance was happening. And so, the feds were thinking, oh, well, these, job numbers are going through the roof in Pinellas County, and the guy was just lying about it. And, which is atrocious.
Right, definitely is. Well, we're on our last question, and then we're going to go to audience questions. So this question is for both of you. How can we improve communication and processes between business leaders and education leaders?
Well, I think, and it's something that we've talked about, there's the pre-COVID world and now the post-COVID world. And, the needs of business leaders is constantly changing. And what they're looking for in employees is constantly changing. And so I think that the key is to be in constant communication and constantly have an open door.
And I believe that the key to communication is transparency and authenticity.
Yeah.
When people know that you're communicating in an authentic fashion, where they're allowed to bring their authentic self to work, and you understand who that is, you get better communication. And when you're transparent with what's going on, then we won't have situations where the disparities are so broad. You have the transparency allows us to all have access to the information. And that's really the core of communication, is really having information so that we can make informed decisions about whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's the college that we choose to go to or the job that we choose to apply for. It's about that information and the transparency of making sure that it is authentic, it is sincere, and it is trustworthy. The communication line goes both ways. And if we can build a more trusting environment, I think that we'll have more meaningful outcomes in our relationships and our communication.
I agree. We'll have you take over for audience questions.
Well, thank you, first of all. You guys still have a lot of more questions to answer. But just listening to you all, I just learned so much about what we as a community are doing right?
Yeah.
We're encouraging economic mobility. We're fostering educational equity. We're supporting our generational community. We are pivoting in a difficult space, and we're holding our leaders and our community leaders and our educational leaders, rather, accountable for equitable spaces. And so although when you put a lot of light on people, it tends to shine bright, I think that we're doing the right thing. We're headed in the right direction of sharing the space and telling people that there is another space besides going directly to college for a 4-year degree and a higher degree when you can have economic mobility quickly.
Yes.
And that is an important statement. I'd like to thank Duke Energy. You mentioned Duke Energy. Duke Energy sponsored us for the year as well. Mm-hmm. And one thing that was so interesting about that is people say, well, what is Duke doing? Duke is putting people to work. That's what they're doing.
Yes.
I also like to thank, at this time, Amscott and Granville Hook Marketing. Again, local businesses have supported us through this pandemic and have taught us that we can rely on each other in our community. We have some pre-submitted questions, and I think you all touched on them, but I'd like you to go a little bit deeper. So you have employers now who have a different space, and all three of you included,
Yes.
in terms of trying to be nimble with their new workforce. The questions, and I'm going to lump two together, are how do you help employers encourage remote positions, and how do you allow them to have trust that there's higher efficiency when they're giving these employees the space to work in this challenging environment? And I'd like all three of your responses. You can start, Dean Barry.
That goes back to trust. Trust, accountability, and transparency, but also training your workforce. There's, 6 generations now? I think there's, 6 generations in the workforce. So you have to meet all of their different needs and different demands, and to work in this space. We've been working in this space for about a year and a half. To make those adjustments, we have to give, I say, grace, we call it, that empathy and compassion as leaders, and training comes with that. St. Pete College, we do it very well. And from our corporate space, we provide those soft skills training, those technical skills, but we help coach organizations to be nimble and to pivot to adjust to the workforce today. And so we can coach you through that. If you need that assistance, that's what we do. So if you need workforce remote training, someone asked us that. How do you train remote? We can help you train remote. What does that mean? All the different systems, Zoom, Teams, there's many other platforms out there. We can train individuals, and that's from all generations. We even started a Silver Scholars program because we saw a need just from the local workforce board. I think it's 15% of the 25,000 that's unemployed right here in Pinellas are over 65, and they're still working and looking for jobs. Guess what? We have a class just for you. We're going to teach you the skills to get back to work. And so those are the things that we're doing here at St. Petersburg College to pivot and be nimble to meet the workforce needs.
Dr. Johnson.
You know, I think that in order for us to have successful programs with the whole teleworking environment is we have to really be clear with the expectations and the perimeters that we give to our employees about that environment. So you have to have accountability checkpoints. You have to make sure that you have performance measures that take into account whether or not an employee is being successful at home. And then you have to really think about, I just read an article and it said the trauma of COVID on the workforce. And it was just saying, it was speaking to, we have to look at our employees differently because COVID has created a different employee. Most of us, if not all of us, have been touched, or a family member, or a friend, or a relative, or a neighbor has been impacted negatively around COVID. And then in addition to that, the camaraderie that we feel when we're in the office, that conversation, that vibe that you get from people, you know, that is not there when we're doing the teleworking environment. So as employers, we have to look at ways of how we can incorporate that into the virtual world, if you will, and be mindful that our employees are having a lot of additional stressors other than just the job at hand. And when you have those kind of transparent, authentic discussions with your employees, you'll find that when you care about them, they care about you. And when they care about you and they know what the expectations are, they really do bring their full self to the job. And so, I would say that would be very important to making sure that this virtual world, because I don't know about you, Chris, but I don't think, even though I wish I didn't have so many Zoom calls, I want to just have a 1 week free of Zoom, But the reality is moving forward, I'm sure Zoom and Teams and all those other platforms are going to be part of our daily work environment from now into the end of time. I just don't see it reverting back. So, but we have to balance how that happens and how we engage in that whole environment. So have some fun on Zoom. Play some games.
Yeah, bingo.
Representative, what do you think?
Jeopardy.
When my aide sent me this invitation for this event, my email back to her was, "This isn't a Zoom, is it?" Because I didn't want to, I would have done it if it was a Zoom, but it was not my preference. And, a year ago, now, at this time, I was working from home because I had COVID for 6 weeks, and I was going stir crazy. I am not the type that can work from home. I need to be in an office to feel productive. And I think the whole working from home versus working in an office is almost a generational thing. And I think young people are used to it, and now I feel old. I'm almost turning 40. But I...
Me too.
Yeah.
All right.
And I, you know, because I'm not the type that can work from home. I need to, if I'm at home, you know, I want to have background noise or something, and so then I can't concentrate. You know, but if I'm in an office, I can be productive, and then whenever I leave the office, I want to leave my work at the office, and so, you know, but I think older people, and I'll put myself in that category, you know, don't really view, you know, don't think that you can be as productive working from home. And so they want to see their employees at the office. And I'll, you know, put people my parents' age kind of in that category. They don't think you can be as productive. And so it goes back to the trust and you know, have accountability markers and things like that. You know, and I kind of view it as a technology kind of debate. And a few years ago in the legislature, there was a big knockdown, drag-out fight for several years over taxi cabs and Ubers. And it wasn't Republican or Democrat. It was young legislators versus old legislators. And, you know, people my dad's age did not understand Ubers. And, I mean, he still doesn't. But, you know, and they literally would say, well, if you go in an Uber, can't you get kidnapped? You know, and they didn't understand the whole, you know, having it on your phone and following it along on your phone and having, you know, they were just used to their whole life, you know, getting in a taxi and the taxi cab driver just going where they were going to take them. And so I think that's kind of what we're seeing now with the whole remote work versus working in an office. You know, I think it's going to take time to get used to, but once it becomes a new normal, people are going to, you know, get used to it. And there's some professions like, you know, real estate, for instance, is, you know, almost always been a work from home type thing, and you know, people have thrived at it. And I think a lot of, you know, a lot of industries now will, you know, go from working remotely, and, you know, when you need a Zoom call, you just, you know, get on Zoom and you can talk to each other and you know, carry on that way.
I will just add to that it is, although it's a transition, it's a really great transition in terms of efficiency in casting a wider net. You are able to reach so many different markets, get across the state faster, to get across nationally, and engage with people you ordinarily would not. And so although it's been a transition, and I have had I have a younger person that I work with, it is very interesting how the dynamic between the traditional space that you grew up working in versus this new space, which can force you to be really efficient because you can work from your phone, in the car, on the side of the road.
Yes, you can.
and in all different random spaces in the parking lot, and be ready and available. So, which brings another question, which is a great question that was pre-submitted about, the quote is "Great Resignation," because employees have so much flexibility in where they can work and now geographically where they live while they work. How do we attract good quality employees who want to stay and remain? You mentioned, you know, a time period where people were very loyal to their corporations or organizations for a very lengthy period of time, sometimes a lifetime. And now you can have employees shift and hop based on the opportunity. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, when it comes to, I'm a millennial. I just wanted to point that out.
Amen.
I'm still under the 40 club, and I can tell you, loyalty is not there for millennials. They'll jump from job to job to job. But for me, my grandmother raised me, so I saw my mom stay with county government for 42 years. And so for me, when I look at an employer, I'm very loyal because that's where I grew up watching, meaning that you work hard, you put in your hours, you go to work. Not everybody's like me. I'm a little different breed, okay? So they're looking for upward mobility really quick, leadership. Start the job. I want to be the leader in the next year. When I caution to employers, when I talk to them about building out training programs, look at a leadership program, leadership pathways, help build them. You have a degree here. You may need a certification. If you go to this next level, we can raise you and get you promoted. And so they want to have that sense of belonging. I'm just giving you what my feedback is from millennials, the sense of belonging in an organization, and they can see a pathway to the top. And you do that. Mentorship, have different programs that are available for different generations that meet their needs in order for them to be loyal. That's the retention. And of course, wage. All right, I'm going to tell you what was told to me. Valenthia, you can move to DC, Atlanta, and Houston or Dallas. But guess what? You can be a big fish in a little pond, right? Or a little fish in a big pond. So you decide. And for me, the Tampa Bay area is my home, and that's what I believe in. And so recruiters, employers, I encourage you to talk to them. Talk to them about investing their time back at home and to see it all the way through. I want my kids to live here, thrive here, and grow up. And the only way I can do that is if I put myself out there and be a part of the community. Community service, different things that attract them. Millennials they love that. Put different things out there, incentives. So I can just give you that. That's the retention is you got to make it with a shiny bow.
Well, I'm not quite a millennial, but I do have one at home. So, one of the things that I think is really important for that employee retention is it's more than a job. It's about your community. So we have to create an environment that is conducive to all of the lifestyle choices that one may have, whether it's our beautiful beaches or being able to go to a museum or go listen to a concert on the water. So we have to create the environment and engage our nonprofits and all of the community organizations so that we can, as we build that relationship with employees, find out what's their passion, what do they enjoy, what do they like to do, and build that into the corporate culture. And as you build that into the corporate culture and you show that, hey, it's better than you think, it's more than just a job, it's a job that, okay, I get to telework for 4 hours, but I get to go have lunch sitting on the beach, So it's the full circle of the community. So economic development is really about the community assets. So as we share our community assets, we are able to encourage our employers to have their employees look at our community in more ways than just a job, because it is more than about a job. So with that comes quality education for their kids to have a quality education. We have a fantastic K-12 system. And our higher education system, we have options in our community. We have innovation in our community. And then we look at the arts and the culture, and you look at all of the things that are going on, and you get people excited about being in the environment. So it's just not about a job. It's about being a citizen in a community that is outstanding, a community that's ideal for business, but is also ideal for whatever your leisure services or your leisure activities are, as well as a place that you can raise your family and feel safe and part of a community. As Dean Valenthia says, you feel a place of belonging when you come to Pinellas County. Whether you want to go to the sponge docks and have a Greek salad, or you want to go down to St. Pete and sit on the, at the pier and have a margarita. Whatever it is, you can have that sense of belonging. We have 24 unique municipalities in an unincorporated county. Not too often you can go into one county and get all of those choices. So as employers, we have to sell the lifestyle of our community, and it's more than just the paycheck that someone gets at the end of an 8-hour shift.
That's true.
Yeah, I think, there's a difference between worrying about, especially people in our generation. Are you a millennial at 39?
I'll be 39 this year.
So I guess I'm still kind of a millennial.
All right, we're together.
Because that's how old I am. And our generation is kind of the entitled generation, and we think that, society owes us something. And so, there is this, by nature, we're not very loyal. But I think, in terms of living in a specific area, I think Pinellas County and Tampa Bay sells itself.
Yeah,
I mean, we got the beach right down the street. Tom Brady lives here, for heaven's sake.
I know, right?
We have 3 weeks of winter that's never consecutively. It's scattered. And so for my friend here in Indiana that's visiting, you should maybe buy a house here while you're here. Because when you think about it, we live where people come to vacation or come to die. And this is where we, get to wake up every day. And, you can have lunch at the beach, or go to a baseball game, every night during the summer, or go see Tom Brady and Gronkowski on a Sunday afternoon. And so, I'm not necessarily artsy, but we have some world-class museums. Ruth Eckerd Hall and world-class concerts. And so, we have all kinds of things, whether you're young or old, or in the middle. And, and so it's, there's a reason why, even during the pandemic, more people were moving to Florida than were leaving. And, and not having a state income tax helps. But, it's also, just walk outside.
Yeah.
And, maybe not at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but, Pinellas sells itself.
Yeah.
And, I always say that Tampa Bay is great, but it's better with Pinellas in the mix. So, so many of our citizens come here on vacation. Mm-hmm. And because of our citizens, they feel a sense of belonging, and they move their businesses back here.
Yeah, that's true.
We have numerous CEOs who started off as a family vacation, and now they have moved their corporations to our community. So we have to collectively embrace the diversity and the variety of opportunities we have in our community.
Well, I want to thank you all for your questions. We still have an audience here, and because we got off to a little bit of a late start, we want to make sure that we still honor to make sure you all don't have any questions. Are there any questions for any of the panelists here? And if so, because of our technological challenges, I hope that you're okay that I pivot and get close to you to share the mic. Okay. We ready, Matt? Okay, we have a question over here, and if you can say it loudly.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about anyone's insights into technical training. Someone made a great remark earlier. Not everyone is designed to go through many, many years of university studies. And at the same time, I've noticed we oftentimes have a shortage of things like plumbers, electricians. Can you address that for anyone, let's say, growing up in Pinellas County, who doesn't see themselves always going to school, but maybe they have a desire to be an independent contractor or run a small
Well, and that's something that we've tried to do in the legislature is apprenticeship programs even with high school students. Because as you said, not everybody is destined for a long college career, if any college career. When I was in school, and I'm sure when you were in school, Dean, our guidance counselor would almost tell you, you know, if you don't go to college, you're going to be a failure, which was nonsense. But, you know, you can be a plumber, electrician, contractor, and make almost six figures, you know, and really start early on after high school. And so what we tried to do is, and we passed a bill last year to establish some apprenticeships even at the high school level to get these kids in with people that can train them even, you know, as 17, 18-year-olds to learn those trades so, you know, early on after they could get a certificate or go to a school like P-Tech and, you know, become a plumber, electrician, you know, something like that.
And not only are those Pinellas Technical College technical opportunities available, but as a core part of the economic development function for Pinellas County is to cultivate entrepreneurship. So we are constantly working. We have a small business development center to help give you the tools to be successful as a business, along with our SBA, who's helping to support the cultivation of entrepreneurship. So there are some real key jewels of tools in our community toolkit that can really meet an individual, a citizen, at whatever stage they are at, whether it's at, you know, trying to decide, should I start this business, or do I expand this business, or do I take the college university route? And as I go through that process, how can I one day be the employer instead of the employee? So it's all about sharing that information.
I agree.
Oh, please,
At St.
please.
Pete College, we also have a short-term training program, but we have workforce certificate programs that lead to also that job, but that get to that six figures. Our high-end IT certifications, entry level into healthcare that leads to that pathway to being an RN or an healthcare administrator. So we have those short-term programs, 4 weeks to 14 weeks, and we can get you in there. That's what we call it.
And
Fast
not
and quick.
to really speak about the competition.
Yes.
And I don't even know if they're competition, but schools like the National Aviation Academy
Yes.
on Almerton, who works and teaches kids how to be airplane mechanics. And I think that school is like a 2-year school, if I'm not mistaken. And then once they're finished there, they can go to TIA or St. Pete Clearwater Airport and get a very nice $60,000, $80,000 a year job.
Yeah, good job.
Yes, and we had another question in the back, so we'll take both the questions at once so that we can wrap up. So we have someone from the Seminole Chamber. Can you stand up and say your question? And then our guest from Indiana, will you rapid fire afterwards? Thank you.
So it's probably still early to understand the data that comes from COVID, but Seminole is virtually 90% small business and mom and pops that need hourly wage personnel. That sector is virtually gone away. It's like they just disappeared. They're not, doesn't seem like enrollment in college and university has spiked a great deal. And now our unemployment has been, the COVID-related unemployment has been taken away. So what are we attributing to that non-minimum wage worker coming back to work? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, I just have one comment on that. You know, I think that there are many factors for them not coming back to work. You know, childcare expenses are a major factor, and then the wage imbalance. My son is having his first kid, and so I'm going to be a grandmother.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
So my son is having his first kid, and they're two college-educated individuals. However, we're looking at the expense of bringing this newborn into this world in childcare, and they're having serious discussions about his fiance not working and staying home because it's more cost effective to do so. So, you know, there are many factors that impact what's happening with our workforce in our low wage frontline worker positions. You know, we have to look at the totality of the impact of not having the wages, having expensive childcare, the affordability of being able to pay rent. You know, that really is a big factor as well. So, like I said, I think that there are many factors that play into that, and it's not just, you know, people don't want to go to work. That's my belief. I think that for the majority of our citizens, they want to be gainfully employed, but they want to make a wage that they can afford to live a quality life.
We have one more question.
Sure, and I'll be very brief.
No, thank you for coming.
Really some observations more than anything.
Sure.
And congratulations to you and the panel of the Institute. I mean, this could have been a discussion in Indiana for, I mean, the exact same stuff. And I'm glad that you touched on the trades because, and I came down here on a golf trip many years ago and do own a property at North Beach in Clearwater Beach. And so, you know, try getting an electrician or a plumber and any of them under 40. So I mean, it's a great opportunity for young people today to get into the skilled trades. And but I did want to make an observation. A lot of talk about remote and telework, but you know, you mentioned Duke Energy and the linemen. Go up and down Mandalay. They don't need that. I mean, they need bodies. They need people in the stores, in the restaurants, in the lines. And so the telework discussion can only go so far. And then, like you mentioned unemployment. People were making more on unemployment insurance than they were in their jobs. And that's the major detriment that all states faced. And then you all multiple times alluded to data and having good, sound data to make decisions on for employers and job seekers. Just wanted to mention, you know, somebody we work with Indiana Care Connect, which brings together very, very good timely data with employers and job seekers. The company that does that for us is literally right around the corner. I mean, literally 10 minutes up the street. Geographic Solutions
Yes.
Yeah.
is in 35 states.
Yes, they are.
And you guys know them.
Yeah.
You know what they can deliver. So, because a lot of, I was glad to see that every one of you alluded to good, solid data, whether it's minority related, training related, or whatever. So just some observations and congratulations for doing this. I appreciate the work.
Well, thank you. I always say this. I am of Florida, but not from Florida. I'm actually a Midwesterner from the great state of Illinois. So thank you, fellow neighbor, for coming down. And I want to thank you all for sticking it out and coming so late this evening and for listening to an important conversation. At ISPS, we care about policy, and we care about how policy impacts people and their day-to-day lives. And these conversations are important so our congressional leaders and our community leaders and our educational leaders can come up with quality solutions to make sure that we have a stronger, better community. Again, I want to thank Scott for hosting this evening, along with Grapple Hook Marketing. And we have some upcoming events I'd like to share, too. I don't know if they're up there. Great, they're up there. So we can pivot. We have a minimum wage program coming up, and that is going to be on October 19th at Tarpon Springs Distillery. So we're excited to take some of our programs and, as you noted, have face-to-face. Whether we have 10 people or 50 people, it's time to start moving back to greeting each other. So we're excited about that. Terry Schiavo case with Judge Greer. Judge Greer actually sits on our board, and for a lot of young people, they don't even know what Terry Schiavo case is and the impact it had on planning, and so for your loved ones and for yourselves. So that will be at October 28th, and that will be at our Seminole Digitorium. And we have a couple more, Clean Energy in Florida. That's going to be at our Bay Pine STEM Center, and that's going to be on November 9th. and we're going to do a program understanding how technologies are impacting employment. And finally, I think we have one more. This is one program that was inspired by our executive chair, Judge Irene Sullivan, and she wanted to do an international student engagement program with students from China. So we're really excited to have this program, a virtual program where they're going to get to learn about us and we're going to get to learn about them. So we invite you to come to our website, isps.spcollege.edu. Follow us on Facebook, find us on YouTube, but participate and share your thoughts. We're here for you. And I want to thank our panel representative, Dr. Johnson, Dean Barry. Thank you so much. I would also be remiss without thanking the provost for allowing us to have this space and our vice president for coming and supporting tonight and our ISPS team. Have a wonderful night.